Winter had a quiet dominion over Kennecott. The snow blanketed the town like a soft, suffocating shroud, erasing the edges of streets, roofs, and abandoned copperworks. Yet beneath the white serenity, the earth whispered warnings, unseen and relentless. Cracks snaked under the frozen ground, subtle but growing, a reminder that even in apparent stillness, danger never sleeps. Residents who remained that winter walked cautiously. Boots crunched over brittle ice, each step measured, aware of the hidden fractures beneath. Some of the older miners said the ground had memory, that it remembered the weight of the mines, the tunnels, and the machinery, and now it was restless. Their voices were low, almost conspiratorial, carrying tales of fissures appearing overnight, of basements warming in pockets that should have been cold, and of snow settling unevenly where hidden heat pulsed beneath. Anna, the town chronicler, took her notebook and camera out every morning. She documented the subtle shifts in the landscape, tiny plumes of steam curling through fissures in the snow, rooftops that seemed to tilt slightly overnight, and icicles melting faster in some areas than others. Her images captured not just a town at the mercy of winter, but a town in constant negotiation with the earth itself. The snow made the mines invisible. Copper veins that had once glittered in the sunlight were now buried under layers of frost and ice. The town's abandoned buildings were ghosts, whitewashed by snow, their corners softened and windows fogged. Yet the cracks were patient and insistent. On some days, a faint orange glow would flicker through the snow near a mine entrance, a subtle signal that heat and pressure lingered beneath the frozen surface. Young Luke, the journalist exploring the town, wandered carefully along old paths. He spotted a fissure spreading under what appeared to be a sturdy wooden walkway. The snow had concealed it perfectly. He knelt and poked at the edges, feeling the warmth beneath, a quiet pulse that contradicted the cold around him. It was beautiful and terrifying, a paradox of nature's power over human construction. The townsfolk who stayed had adapted, but the adaptation was uneasy. Walkways were reinforced with planks, snowdrifts were shoveled carefully to avoid hidden weak spots. Daily inspections of foundations and storage sheds became a ritual. They had learned to read the subtle signs, the odd rising of mist, the faint scent of sulfur carried on the wind, and the tiny creaks that echoed beneath the frozen ground. Families spoke less and observed more. The winter silences were long, broken only by the occasional groan of a frost-laden building or the distant crack of a tree succumbing to ice. Conversations were about survival, which roads were safe, which basements remained cold, and which structures had begun to shift imperceptibly. The cracks beneath the snow became both literal and symbolic, evidence that Kennecott's past was never fully buried, that history's weight remained, pressing upward, waiting. As the weeks passed, the town became quieter, each day punctuated by careful observation. Anna's photographs, Luke's notes, and the residents' whispered warnings formed a collective memory of a place that was beautiful in its frozen stillness, but dangerous in its hidden restlessness. Kennecott in winter was a lesson in vigilance, a reminder that beneath every serene surface, nature holds power that cannot be ignored. By late afternoon, the snow cast long shadows across the cracked streets. Steam rose from hidden fissures like ghostly fingers reaching for the sky. Each step on the frozen ground was an act of awareness, a negotiation with forces older and larger than the town itself. The cracks beneath the snow were patient, silent, yet impossible to forget, a quiet, unyielding testament to the interplay of human ambition and natural persistence. Kennecott slept under a white blanket, but the earth did not. Beneath the calm, the pulse of the mines continued, reminding all who remained that some truths cannot be buried, and that survival in such a place demands respect, caution, and the patience to see beneath the surface. Kennecott had always been a town carved out of ambition, ice, and copper. Nestled deep in Alaska's Wrangell Mountains, its rise had been as sudden as the frigid winters that clawed at its edges. For decades, miners, engineers, and their families had pushed themselves against unforgiving terrain, breathing life into a settlement that seemed impossible on any map. Yet, as with all dreams tethered to extraction, the end was always waiting, quietly, beneath the surface. By the early 1930s, whispers of decline had begun. The rich veins of copper that had once promised fortune were thinning. Machinery that once roared like beasts now creaked and groaned, echoing through the empty streets like mournful ghosts. The town's population, once vibrant and resilient, began to dwindle as younger generations sought safer futures elsewhere. Yet a stubborn few remained, their loyalty to Kennecott intertwined with personal histories, childhood memories, first loves, the pulse of a community that had endured snow, avalanches, and the relentless cold. The beginning of the end was not sudden. It arrived in small signs: a mine shaft left unstaffed for a week, a supply cart broken and forgotten in the yard, letters arriving with no reply from families who had already departed. Each day, the town felt emptier, the air heavier, as if the mountains themselves were sighing under the weight of abandonment. Elliot McCarthy, a young miner who had arrived in Kennecott with wide eyes and calloused hands, watched as the last train rumbled away with crates of copper, the tracks groaning under their burden. He had seen friends leave, buildings shuttered, and the once bustling bakery close its doors for good. Yet he stayed, convinced that his own hands and determination could stave off the inevitable. He patrolled the streets daily, noting the cracks in the foundations, the peeling paint, the thin columns of smoke escaping from forgotten chimneys, as if the town itself were slowly exhaling. Families who lingered were caught in a liminal state between survival and nostalgia. Every footstep on the frozen streets reminded them that Kennecott was no longer what it had been. Windows reflected the pale winter sunlight, but revealed nothing of life inside. Doors creaked under icy winds. Snowdrifts filled the gaps where laughter once lived. Residents became careful observers, measuring each crack in the asphalt, listening for the faint echoes of machinery long silenced. The mines themselves, once roaring with activity, now held an eerie calm. Frosted tunnels stretched beneath the mountains, silent but ominous. Occasionally, a distant rumble, the settling of rock, reminded the remaining few that the earth was not still. The veins of copper still slept beneath their feet, but extraction had ceased. Kennecott was a town on pause, waiting for history to claim it. Among the remaining residents, human stories unfolded quietly. Margaret, an elderly woman who had raised her children in Kennecott, tended a tiny greenhouse in the dead of winter. Her hands worked with precision and care, nurturing the last remnants of life amidst a town that teetered on the edge of disappearance. Each plant she grew was an act of defiance, a reminder that even in decline, life persisted. Children, now rare in the settlement, navigated the streets with caution. They learned early to avoid icy patches and unstable structures, moving like ghosts themselves through a town slowly succumbing to time. Their laughter, when it emerged, sounded fragile and precious against the hollow backdrop of shuttered homes. Engineers who once monitored production returned only to dismantle equipment and document the end. Maps recorded every shaft, every tunnel, every rusted tool, preserving a record for historians who would one day study the rise and fall of Kennecott. The town's narrative was being archived, while its physical presence faded under snow and neglect. By the late 1930s, Kennecott had become almost entirely deserted. Streets lay empty, chimneys released faint smoke into the cold sky, and the surrounding mountains absorbed the silence. The town had become a monument to human ambition and the relentlessness of nature, a place where effort, determination, and community had collided with environmental reality, leaving behind only the echoes of what once was. For those who remained to witness it, the beginning of the end was a lesson. It spoke of impermanence, the fragility of human settlements, and the quiet power of the land. The frozen streets whispered histories in the wind. Abandoned buildings stood as silent sentinels, and beneath it all, the veins of copper slept, waiting for another era, another dream, another town brave enough to rise. Kennecott would never return to its former glory, but in its silence lay a haunting beauty, a testimony to resilience, ambition, and the inescapable passage of time. The beginning of the end was not an abrupt catastrophe, but a gradual cinematic fading, a Drozorian reminder that even the most stubborn dreams must one day bow to the rhythm of the earth. The day the trains stopped. The morning air was crisp, sharp enough to sting exposed skin, and the frozen peaks surrounding Kennecott glimmered in the pale light of dawn. The whistle of the copper trains, usually a heartbeat of the town, never sounded that day. It was as if the mountains themselves had swallowed the rhythm of industry. Workers trudged through snowdrifts, boots crunching against icy tracks, their breath forming clouds that drifted upward into a silent sky. The trains had carried copper from the veins deep inside the mountains to distant cities, fueling industry and war, making Kennecott a crucial node in America's industrial expansion. Yet that morning, a sense of unease lingered. The first signs came as a subtle tremor beneath the tracks. Some dismissed it as frost heaving the rails. Others, those who had labored in the mines for decades, knew it was something more. By mid-morning, the tremors had grown sharper, a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to echo through the mountains themselves. The engineers gathered at the depot, instruments in hand, eyes narrowing at the readings. Ice and snow had concealed the cracks forming beneath the rails, the slow, inexorable movement of earth reshaping the foundations that had once seemed permanent. Tommy Hale, a young brakeman, stared down the tracks with a growing sense of dread. He had walked these rails since boyhood, carried copper shipments across these icy stretches, and felt the pulse of the town through the rumble of wheels. Today, the pulse had stopped. A hush fell across the depot as the first train approached. A low, groaning metallic sound, but it faltered halfway across the bridge, spanning a frozen creek, sparks flying as the wheels clashed with buckled rails. The conductor leapt from his cab, shouting orders to halt, his voice barely carrying over the cold wind. No one dared approach the twisted tracks. The town's miners and engineers understood the gravity immediately. A critical shift had occurred in the permafrost beneath the railbed. What had once seemed stable and unyielding had become treacherous, and the trains, the lifeblood of Kennecott, could no longer move safely. Families gathered near the depot, watching the halted train with anxious eyes. Copper shipments delayed, wages suspended, and a town dependent on the rhythm of industry came to an eerie cause. Children whispered, clutching mittens, while elders exchanged grave looks, understanding that nature had asserted itself over human ambition in a way that money and labor could not counter. Inside the mines, work slowed. Miners paused at their tunnels, listening to the faint groan of shifting earth above. Equipment shuddered, as though alive, responding to invisible pressures beneath the frozen ground. The day, once filled with familiar routines, the clatter of shovels, the hiss of steam, the chatter of colleagues, now held only tension and uncertainty. Engineers raced against time, marking unstable sections of track, shoring up bridges, and consulting maps that traced the veins of copper running beneath mountains. It was clear. The day the train stopped was not a simple malfunction. The land itself had chosen to disrupt, to remind the people of Kennecott that even the most human-made systems could falter against relentless natural forces. By evening, the sun dipped behind jagged peaks, casting long shadows across the halted trains and frozen rails. Workers trudged back to their cabins, weary and contemplative. Families gathered around small stoves, warming hands and hearts, recounting tales of resilience in the harshest conditions. The silence of the tracks mirrored a new understanding. Kennecott's survival relied not solely on copper or railroads, but on the respect for the land, the patience to adapt, and the vigilance to anticipate nature's quiet but inexorable power. That night, the town slept uneasy, the frozen mountains looming like sentinels. The trains remained still, a reminder of both achievement and vulnerability. And in the distance, where copper veins threaded through ice and rock, Kennecott's pulse continued, slower, more deliberate, tethered to a rhythm dictated by the land itself. Join us for the next story. Please like and subscribe to stay with us.